The Alphabet Killer. Original horror movie story. They called him the Alphabet Killer, not because he left letters at the scene, not because he was some cryptic genius. No, it was far worse than that. He killed in order. A girl named Amanda from Albany, then Becca from Boston, then Cassie from Camden. By the time the FBI caught on, he was already at letter F. Agent Marla Vex was the only one who saw the pattern from the beginning. A former profiler turned small-town investigator. She noticed the murders weren't just following the alphabet. They were geographically and alphabetically matched, like a grim child's game. Each girl's first name matched the first letter of the city they were killed in. When girl Gina from Galveston, was found strung up in a playground, her skin carved with letters, the FBI launched a national manhunt. But the killer didn't leave clues. No DNA, no prints. Just one thing. A small wooden block from a children's alphabet set, painted red, left in the victim's mouth. Letter by letter, victim by victim. They were running out of time. By the time Marla arrived in Hamilton, Ohio, she knew what to expect. She begged local police to post guards at all girls' schools, but they brushed her off. "They're not gonna hit this place," the sheriff said. "This is just a boring town." But the killer thrived on boring. The next morning, Hannah Harper, 14, was missing. They found her 24 hours later in an abandoned library, staged in the history section. Her wrists were tied with typewriter ribbon. Her mouth was stuffed with paper from a dictionary. And in her hands, clutched tight, even in death, the letter H block. Marla snapped. She told the task force, "This is an incantation, a ritual sacrifice." They didn't listen. But she knew. He wasn't just picking letters, he was spelling something. One name, one death at a time. She dove into old cases, digging back further. That's when she found the blueprint. A psychiatric hospital in rural Maine, burned down in 1999. There, she found patient records redacted by the government, including one boy who stood out. Name, unknown nickname. Alpha. He had been part of an experimental language therapy program, taught to associate letters with emotional triggers. Abuse, punishment, reward, all built around letters of the alphabet. A human lab rat turned monster. The report ended with one note. Patient shows obsessive-compulsive patterning and ritualistic behavior. Believes completing the alphabet will grant him completion or control. Marla circled the word completion. She called the bureau. They didn't answer. Then came T. Ivy from Indianapolis. Same pattern, same block, but this time something new. On the wall, written in blood. The word becomes flesh. Marla felt sick. He wasn't spelling a message. He was spelling a name. Letter by letter, each one tied to a soul. Each victim a piece of something he believed he was summoning. And if that name was completed, letter J, Julia from Jacksonville. By now, the country was locked in fear. Parents pulled kids from school. Cities panicked if their names started with K. Marla barely slept, connecting dots, tracking patterns, trying to predict where he'd go next. Then she found something. Each city wasn't just random, they formed a trail, a shape, when plotted on a map. It wasn't just alphabetical, it was a sigil, a summoning circle across the United States. Whatever he was doing, he was almost halfway finished. Soon, he was almost halfway finished. She raced to Kenosha, Wisconsin, where she believed he'd strike next. Police barricaded the town. Schools were shut. Cameras posted everywhere. But they were too late. Kylie, 17. Missing. She was found in the back of an old church, crucified against an altar made of school desks. Block K jammed into her throat. Marla knew the truth now. The alphabet killer wasn't killing at random. He was constructing something, letter by letter, name by name, and when he reached letter Z, it would be finished. She ran the names he'd used so far through software, looking for commonalities. First letters, vowels, frequency. Then she saw it. He wasn't just spelling a name, he was spelling his own. She cross-referenced the remaining letters and found a match buried in those redacted files. Zorakiel, an angel's name, one of the fallen. Marla's blood ran cold. This wasn't a serial killer. This was a man trying to resurrect a demon, brick by brick, soul by soul. Each letter a sacrifice to rebuild a broken angel. He believed he was chosen. And he believed when the last letter was carved, the name would become a living force, reborn into flesh, born from blood. Now it was time for letter L, and Marla had a new fear. She knew who the next girl was. Lena, from Louisville, her niece. She grabbed her badge, her gun, and a crucifix, and drove through the night. She didn't care about rules. She didn't care about red tape. There were only 15 letters left, and if she failed, the final word wouldn't just be written in blood. It would speak. Marla reached Louisville just before dawn. The streets were fog-wrapped and silent. No press, no patrols. She didn't alert the locals, couldn't risk the killer catching wind and vanishing again. If she was right, he would strike tonight. She went straight to Lena's house. Her sister, exhausted and scared, barely opened the door before collapsing into her arms. "I saw something last night," her sister whispered. At the edge of the woods, a man, just standing there. Watching Lena's window, Marla went cold. It was happening. Letter L. She turned Lena's bedroom into a command post. Cameras, motion sensors, trip alarms. She armed herself and stayed up all night, waiting. At 3:13 a.m., every light in the house flickered out. Then came the sound. Soft, rhythmic, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. 3 times on Lena's window. Marla didn't hesitate. She threw open the curtain, gun drawn, but saw nothing outside. Only a small wooden L block, sitting on. No footprints. No one in sight. She ran outside, searching the yard, flashlight cutting through the fog, and that's when she saw it. The trees had letters carved into their bark. Hundreds of them. A spiraling language, a message, a map, and in the center of the clearing, a crude wooden figure, life-sized, nailed to a cross made of rusted street signs. On its chest, the letter M burned into the wood. It was a warning, or a threat. She was next. Marla now knew the killer wasn't just following the alphabet. He was taunting her. He was inviting her into the ritual, into the pattern, into the madness. This wasn't about completing the name of a fallen angel anymore. It was about choosing who spoke the final letter. And deep down, Marla feared the truth. Maybe this killer wasn't summoning the demon. Maybe he was becoming it. Marla barely slept. The L block haunted her desk like a ticking clock, counting down the remaining letters. Her mind raced, reviewing files, old maps, patterns of movement. The killer was getting bolder, personal, and worst of all, he was accelerating. 2 days later, Madison from Memphis was found inside an abandoned school bus, hands folded, eyes sewn shut. the M block placed inside a lunchbox beside her. It was no longer days between murders. It was hours. Marla tracked a line between the crime scenes, city by city, letter by letter, and discovered something she hadn't seen before. Each victim's location wasn't just part of a summoning circle. They were points on a sigil, shaped like a glyph from an ancient demonic alphabet, buried deep in occult archives. Each name, each death, was a ritual stroke, drawing a curse across the country. One that wouldn't just summon a demon, it would open a door. The next letter was N. Nina, 18, from Newark. ... Marla called local PD, but they were overwhelmed. Dozens of false reports. Social media in chaos. People panicking. But the killer moved in silence. Nina vanished during her morning jog. Found in the park. Heart removed, N block in her chest cavity, and etched into the grass in blood. When the name is spoken, the veil will tear. Marla had to make a choice, keep chasing him one letter at a time, or break the cycle. She returned to the ruins of the main asylum, the place where it all began, and in the rubble, she found a sealed room beneath the foundation, a hidden wing scorched but intact. Inside, medical diagrams, books on binding spirits to flesh, and a name scribbled over and over again in charcoal, Zerakiel. She traced her fingers over the crumbling page, whispering the name, and in that moment, something moved behind her. She turned. There he was, the alphabet killer. Tall, calm, wearing a coat stitched with letters from. Face hidden behind a mask made from fragments of children's blocks. And in his hand, carved from bone, the letter O. For Olivia, he said, his voice smooth and inhuman. From Omaha. She's next. Why? Marla demanded. Why her? Why any of them? He tilted his head. The name is almost whole. One more soul, and the voice will be born. The voice that speaks the dark. The voice that ends the light. He turned to leave. You can't stop this, and vanished into the mist. Marla screamed into the wind, her voice swallowed by the ruins. But she had her answer now. He was building not just a name. He was creating a mouth. And soon, the darkness would speak.